There we go. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this month's Tavern Tastings. Tonight's discussion centers around Indigenous foodways, the study of recipes, cooking, eating methods, and traditions developed over time, and provide ways for Indigenous people to creatively preserve their culture within the context of the colonialization of North America. My name is Mary Tsaltas-Ottomanelli, the Special Programs and Engagement Manager here at Fraunces Tavern Museum. I am joined by my wonderful co-host and partner in crime, Catherine Prescott, Assistant Museum Director and Chief Curator at Keeler Tavern Museum and History Center. Tonight, we are joined by the acclaimed chef, Shane Chartrand of the Enoch Cree Nation, and the food writer, Jennifer Cockrall-King, who together recently co-authored the cookbook, tawâw, Progressive Indigenous Cuisine. Jennifer was born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6, but is now residing in the village of Naramata on Syilx territory in the Okanagan Valley of the British Columbia. Yes, I got a thumbs up. Jennifer is a food culture writer and author of the books Food in the City, Urban Agriculture, and the New Food Revolution, and the Food Artisans of the Okanagan, Your Guide to Locally Crafted Fare. She is currently finishing a book about seed banks, seed security, and seed savers around the world. I want to get everybody's bio correct tonight. Shane of the Muskogosic Enoch Cree Nation not only represents one of Canada's leading chefs, but is also actively involved in the reemergence of Indigenous cuisine in Canada. He has competed on television's Chopped Canada, Iron Chef Canada, and Fridge Wars. He is a judge on Food Network's Canada Wall of Chefs and was also featured in the award-winning documentary series Red Chef Revival. Born to Cree parents and raised by the Métis family, a Mi'kmaq Irish mother, Shane has spent the last 10 years learning about his history, visiting with other First Nation peoples, gathering and sharing knowledge and stories, and creating dishes that combine his diverse interests and express his unique personality. He is passionate about sharing his knowledge and experiences in order to promote understanding and respect across and within Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. He especially loves traveling to other Indigenous communities to learn from elders and inspire Indigenous youth to pursue their dreams, being true to their identity, and finding a creative path forward through work and service of their communities. Their cookbook, tawâw, won a Best in Canada for its category of the World Gourmand Cookbook Awards and came in third in the International Best in World Gourmand Awards. So thank you to Shane and Jennifer for agreeing to join us tonight. We are so honored to have you here. We have one comment, one land acknowledgement statement from Keeler Tavern that we'd also like to read tonight.
Yeah, so before we start, I did want to read our land acknowledgement statement in order to truthfully acknowledge that our site's history and present experiences do not start with European settlers. So the town of Ridgefield exists on the ancestral homelands of the Ramapo, Munsee Lenape, and Wishquaistic people. They were the original stewards of this land on which the Keeler Tavern Museum and History Center stands today. We thank them for their strength and their resilience in stewarding this land, and we hope to continue their legacy of protecting the site and its history.
Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start with the easy questions. How did you guys get to know each other and write this cookbook?
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. This is just really great to be here. And thank you. We did want to be here. You were absolutely correct. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm talking to you, yes, from the unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. And I'm grateful that I get to live and eat and play and work on this land. So I just want to acknowledge that. Well, Shane and I met, we both grew up in the same part of Canada, in central Alberta, and we're about the same age, and we had very different upbringings, of course, but we were both in the food scene in this town called Edmonton. And I'd met Shane and heard about him. Oh, your camera's off for some reason, Shane, but that's okay. I had met Shane and heard about him just through the grapevine, and we knew each other from events, but we didn't really know one another very well. And then I got a phone call out of the blue, which is very Shane, and we talked for about an hour and a half one day, and he was telling me about the fact that he wanted to write a cookbook and I was a food writer. So it was sort of made sense that he would phone. But I got a lot of phone calls from a lot of chefs saying, I want to write a cookbook. And I always said, no, I'm not a cookbook writer. I'm a food writer. So, but Shane is a very engaging, interesting, funny, lovely human being. And we hit it off right off the bat. And I sort of agreed. I said, you know what? I'm interested in helping you get a book proposal going. And I will do my best to help you get this book proposal going. So we started talking, and it took us a long time to get our book proposal together. And then Shane kept insisting that I be involved. So we can't really see you, Shane, but we can hear you. I don't know why your camera's off.
Hold on, let me see here.
Technology.
Everything is messing up, and it's a brand new phone too, so it should be working well. But
Right. Oh, well.
I can also see you.
You can see me, but we can't see you. I think you just have to hit your little video on, video off thing.
A little button.
I can ask you to, what if I hit ask to start video? I'm going to try that. Maybe it'll click on.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the title of the book and tawâw and how the both of you came up with that and the inspiration behind it? Because it is it's a very beautiful meaning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll continue to tell. Shane's a much better storyteller, but I'll continue to tell the story. Shane and I talked and we got together. So Shane's story, which he does a better job of telling, but I'll tell it in the interim here.
Oh, we lost him. Oh, there he goes. Sorry, everybody, for technical difficulties. This is what happens on Zoom.
This is live. This is exciting. So Shane's story is the fact that he was born in Canada, and in Canada we have a situation that is still kind of a legacy situation called the 60s scoop, and Shane was taken away from his biological parents when he was quite young and was in 10 different foster homes till the age of 7. And he was adopted by a lovely family, his family, the Chartrand family, who Dennis is Cree Métis and his mom, Belinda, is Irish Mi'kmaq. So grew up in an Indigenous household, but only found out that he was Cree when he was in his late 20s. So that started him off on a journey of discovering who he was through the lens of food, because he's a chef. And so Shane's, the way Shane sees the world and processes the world and expresses himself in his creative ways. So he wanted to write this cookbook, and so we just talked, and finally it came together where we had a working title called Marrow, because bone marrow is very important in Indigenous cultures and cuisines here in Canada and actually around the world. And it had to do with his DNA and what was in his bones and things like that. So we worked on this book, and we actually got a book deal because Shane is very charming, and we had a proposal. And one night, one of a really great publisher was in the restaurant, Shane's restaurant, and asked to see him. And he was in the kitchen, and it's hot and it's sweaty and it's late at night. And he said, no, I don't want to go out, and I don't want to actually be out in the dining room. I'm, not at my best. And they kept insisting. And so the publishers of our book were there, and they just kept insisting. Shane finally went out. Of course, he's charming. Of course, they hit it off. And 24 hours later, we had a book deal, because we had been working on this book proposal for about a year, and it was called Marrow. Our publishers that partnered with us did a really great job. They were really invested in making sure this book got it right. And there was a lot of collaboration, and we're really grateful for them. And they actually came up with the name tawâw. And tawâw is a Cree word that means welcome, come in, there's room. And in the end, that was the perfect title for this book, because as you'll see when you look through the cookbook, it really is about Shane's story, but how welcoming he is and how easy it is to participate, whether you're from a First Nations background, there he is, or from a non-Indigenous background, in the incredible beauty and creativity of First Nations cultures in Canada, and that's plural. Yeah. So there's Shane. You're back. I think we can hear you too.
Oh,
You just keep,
uh-oh. Almost had him.
Almost had him. Oh, he keeps getting kicked out. Anyways,
yeah, it just keeps breaking up. I'm not sure why. But no. The big thing is knowing what you want to write about and be sure about it, be honest about it, be pure about it, and don't exaggerate. And Jen was the one that pushed me to that point of getting it done. If it wasn't for her, the book wouldn't have not been done.
Well, we're an interesting team because Shane is the creative mind. Obviously, this is his story. So the book itself, I mean, this is Shane's creativity on the cover right here. This is a dish called War Paint. And it's very striking. It's very Shane. It's a bit badass. It's a bit provocative, and it's totally delicious. So that's the type of creativity, culinary creativity that Shane comes up with. But throughout the book, we wanted to tell stories about, when Shane talks about we have to be honest and truthful, there's a lot of raw honesty in this book. Shane, you can talk about the anxiety aspect that you have to cope with sometimes, how to be creative, how to get over these things in life that are very personal to you, but the more personal we got in the book, the more it resonated with other people as well. So we have little vignettes on Shane's tattoos, and also on Shane's experiences just overcoming adversity, different people in our community that are important to us that we collaborated with, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. So there he is. He's back.
I'm trying to stay with you guys. Trust me.
You are. You're doing great.
The funny thing about this is the fact that I keep saying the same thing all the time. I got, so in my studio, I'm Indigenous Indonesian masks. I've got lots of tattoos on my body. I love flowers, which means I did a column called Beautiful and Mean. I'm not mean, I promise you, but most people think I look mean, which was what made that article actually quite fun to me, because people just always think I look mean, and I don't understand it, but it's, I embrace whatever I can embrace. It's me. I'm not a mean person. And the thing about the book was, we had to be very careful of what we were writing. We had to be very exact. And Jen literally studied Indigenous food, which, geez, I mean, she spent a lot of time. And her favorite dish is which one again?
I love the puffed fried wild rice, which is actually funny.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
Because it's a garnish that Shane used to use at his restaurant. And it was, to him, it wasn't even a recipe. I'm like, this needs to go in a book. So wild rice, you boil it for 45 minutes so that, it opens up. Then you dry it. Then you pop it in the deep fryer and you crisp it up and you hit it with salt, and it goes on everything from salads to soups to just eating it like popcorn, watching TV at night. It's so good.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah.
which leads into the next question of recipe development and how the both of you came together. And I know it seems both of you had a really good input on recipe development. And Jen, you have background in Indigenous foodways and studying that. Of how do you go into recipe production and how do you find out what necessarily is Indigenous food and how do you categorize that? Because there's a term of the progressive Indigenous foodways of what's the word I'm looking for? You're just you're reinventing and reclaiming the things that we think about today, right? So what goes into?
I wouldn't say reinventing.
Ah.
Reclaim is a better word. Yes.
Okay. Reclaiming. Sorry, Shane, your network is low, so I'm only getting a couple of your words at a time. I apologize. He said.
Yeah, I don't get it.
I got that one. That one came in clear.
Yeah. No, it's not reinventing. It's just it's reclamation.
Yeah. And maybe Shane, let's talk a little bit about what the term progressive Indigenous cuisine means to you.
So I hope to God you guys can hear me.
Yep.
Progressive does not mean fast forward. It doesn't mean super fine dine. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means progressive is ever changing. Ever changing is what the food world is. When you're dealing with food, it changes all the time. So when you make one dish one day, it might be different the next day and the next day or the next week or the next year. And that was the idea, was about progressive, not trying to be high-end, fancy dancy, stuff like that. That was not the intent of this book. It was meant to be to inspire people. It was meant to be artistic. It's meant to be read. You could buy the book and not even cook any of the recipes. You could just read our lives. Jen's in there. We got Cowboy Smith in there. We got a guy named Chef Ryan O'Flynn is in there. Lori Buffalo is in there. These are people that are influential in my life. And of course, Jen.
He's so good to me. He really is. So we had a lot of fun working on this book because it's true. We developed a really strong friendship bond that when Shane said, I want to write a cookbook, and honestly, I have been approached by so many chefs who want to write cookbooks, but part of the question is why? What do you have to say? Not that their stories are not valid, but Shane really had narrowed in a message, and the message was celebrate this moment of creativity in Indigenous cuisine and his take on it, and finding yourself, discovering where you're from through cooking. I loved it because I was discovering myself. We're all reimagining how we live together on the land, right? Because the history we were taught in my non-Indigenous world is not the actual history of the land.
And the funny thing was, the book took a long time because it went through personal problems. Both of us did. And then we went through, I don't know. You could go on and on and on about the things we had to go through to write this book. And I don't ever want to do it again. I do want to do another book, but it's going to be very small. But I'm not sure what that looks like. But anyway, regardless, tawâw, to me, I don't know. I don't know why it did so well, but it is still selling off the shelves. Like, people call me, they think I've got like 100 copies in my condo that I pay and stop pay. I'm like, do you have any idea? You have to spend money. Like, the whole point is for us to make money. It's a business. And people just assume because we wrote a book, we can just give them away.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but that's okay though. That's just naive thinking, and to be fair, I think one thing I like that we did, that me and you agreed on, was very little alcohol in our recipes. We didn't use a lot of wine. We didn't use a lot of any kind of booze or anything like that. We just tried to keep it as earthy as possible and researched so much, confused sometimes. But that's what makes us grow as human beings, and that's what makes us better. This book has changed my life for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were trying to keep it relevant to Shane's story. So a lot of the recipes have venison and moose and lots of beets in this cookbook, because Shane grew up on a farm and they grew beets and potatoes. And
Oh, I love beets. I love beets. Oh,
exactly. So there's a lot of beet. Yeah.
and
A lot of
goose
beet.
meat.
Moose meat. I know. So Shane's dad takes them when, Shane was growing up. His dad made sure that Shane and his cousins would go out on hunting trips. And the hunting trips would involve, tell them the story about having to pack your own bags and having your dad's watch you.
So I've been hunting my whole life. I don't hunt much anymore. I got a 308, I got a 22 and a 30-30 in my condo. I got a compound bow, I got a long bow, I got lots of hunting knives. But it's funny because hunting is a different world, and it can be a scary world too.
Well, when you were kids, your dad would take you and your cousin out, and he would tell you to pack the bags and then secretly take
that one.
all the things that you didn't bring for like a 14-day wilderness trip, because otherwise you would have died in the wilderness without your dad.
Oh, exactly. My dad made me pack my bag, but he already had my bag packed separately. He wanted to see what I would pack. And you forgot, where's your skinning knife? I don't know. I think I forgot it. Where's your bullets for your rifles? Oh, I think I forgot those too. Where's your camouflage? Oh, forgot that too. Where's your freaking long johns? I don't know.
Yeah.
And he had another bag packed separately just to make sure that I was safe. He said, you see, you've got to learn, and you've got to think, and you've got to understand. You got to realize I was only like, I don't know, I'm 18, I think. But I've been hunting since I was probably about 17, but like shooting when I was like 16, but I just didn't take it seriously, and we were gone for a long time. Like 14 days is a long time in the forest. You have no idea what you're going to see. You could see a cougar, you could see a bear, you could see a black bear, grizzly bear. You could be floating down the river drowning. You never know. I got my raincoat too. Oh, of course we got rained on.
Of course.
You can't see, but my city kid face is horrified of 14 days in the woods. I was like, no, I can take an hour and a half on the subway, and I think that's the extent of it. And I think I am in awe of that entire 14-day trip. But Miriam asked a great question, which I think ties into it. We're talking about moose meat and we're talking about hunting. Are the ingredients that you use in your recipes, are they readily available? So, I mean, beets, yes. Potatoes, yes. I mean, maybe a specialty store for moose, but.
Yeah, everything that we use in our recipes, if you actually read the book, there are some fancier recipes, like war paint on the cover that's a little different. It's a little more interesting because like the thing is I like interesting pictures. I like art. Matter of fact, you wouldn't even believe the amount of art I have in my condo. And the amount of things I like to collect. I just love pictures. I love stories. But all the ingredients are pretty esoteric. Like they're pretty straightforward.
Well,
I think we get a few strange ones in there, don't we, Jen? But not many.
we do, but there's always a suggestion of substitution. So correct. I don't
Yeah.
expect anyone to have a moose roast tucked away, ready to make the dish that we put in because it's Shane's dad's favorite. Slew-fed moose is his favorite. So we made a moose roast, and I mean, you basically make it just like you would make any other beef roast. So you just substitute beef for it, and you're gonna cook it lightly as well. Moose is going to be a bit tougher. So anyways, if you cook it properly, your beef roast is going to be just delicious. Boiled potatoes, hit it with a little bit of parsley and some gravy, pan gravy.
Oh, those boiled potatoes are so good.
Yeah.
Jen, I think that's my favorite in the book is those potatoes.
So we have a recipe for potatoes boiled in cream and garlic. Is it garlic? I think, yeah. Boiled in cream and garlic.
Super simple.
Super simple, but basically you're making mashed potatoes, but the potato wedges are still intact, which is lovely.
Yeah,
So yeah, a lot of the recipes, so we have a, deer shank and things like that. You can just substitute. And sometimes you have to hunt around, like we have a recipe with some bone marrow, and you have to go to the specialty butcher and ask for, a bone with marrow in, and they cut it in half, but they'll easily do that. So you might not find it at your corner grocery store, but if you have a butcher in town, so in a medium-sized city, as Miriam was saying, you should be able to find it. And really so Shane is a professional chef. He's been cooking professionally in kitchens for 20 years, trained at a culinary institute. So lots of French technique, but he's also very interested in Japanese food, loves Japanese food. So we have recipes that have elements of Japanese food in. It's really just get inspired, like look around. If you can't find moss berries or service berries, which are Saskatoon berries in Canada, use blueberries, everything's quite adaptable. And that's part of the ethos of the book, is just to be inspired by the season. So the cookbook is arranged in 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter. Just be inspired by, what's happening around you. And then think about recipes that really connect with the land. And that's really all that the cookbook is about. Every recipe in here has a story. So when Shane was giving me these recipes and cooking for me, and I got to taste them, and then the first thing I would say is, tell me about this recipe. And so it was a simple, seafood broth. But then really, Shane would tell me about these stories of going to the west coast of Canada as a kid and hunting for rocks and pebbles on the beach and turning things over and finding little creepy crawlies underneath. But really, like, the seashore really inspired him. And so that's what that recipe was about. And it wasn't just, oh, we need a seafood dish. No, that was a personal taste memory. And then he would translate it into a recipe that you and I and everybody else can cook. And there's a story behind it, and it connects you to a place and a feeling and a memory. And that's really, to me, what the book brought forward in my cooking too, because it changed the way I cook. And now I just do it so instinctively. I wouldn't dream of, cooking something that's out of season, because there's so much good stuff in season right now. We're in squash season right now in Canada. And I took a lot of pleasure in roasting the first squash of the season last night, and having basically 80% of my dinner was roasted squash with just simple salt and pepper and some butter on top of it. So.
Oh, so good. Oh,
Am I making you hungry?
Jeez. The funny thing is, I'm going to tell you this. Sometimes Jen will talk a lot about me, but this is the thing. The one she did, the biggest thing she did was she was the one that came up with the 4 seasons. I didn't bring that up. So when she brought it up, I was so excited. I'm like, what the heck? How did you think this up? So then what we had to do was we had to break up the recipes into the seasons. And it just made it more fun. Like, I mean, I see, the thing is, I like a challenge. I like people who challenge me. I like people who think I can't do it. I like and that's why I've been on so many TV shows. People just don't sometimes believe in what I can do, and sometimes I don't believe in what I can do. But I have to do my best to be the best I can. And I have to surround myself with the people that know the best, that can drive me in a direction that I'm not used to. Now, TV is not Jen. Jen's a writer. So when she gave me the advice of certain things, I can only listen, because I mean, that's the whole idea of Indigenous peoples. We have to listen. We have to pay attention to the people that are literally there, that know more than we know. You know, I'm not a knowledge keeper. I'm not an elder. I don't speak Cree, but I'm native. I'm from the Enoch tribe. There's no way around it. That is who I am. I learned from actors like Nathaniel Arcand, Cowboy Smith, the people that are in the book. I think the cool thing is too, like even Ryan O'Flynn truly believes this guy's an Irishman, and he believes the Canadian food is Indigenous food, and why is it not being celebrated? And that was really strong. You got to realize, like, he's Irish, he's strong, he's hard-headed, he's a big dude. He's got a pit bull. He's
Named Dave.
He's one of the best chefs in the country.
Yeah. And so Ryan is also from Edmonton, and you're right, he is not First Nations, but he is one of Canada's best chefs, and he was very much an early champion of what Shane was trying to do with bringing Indigenous cuisine and Indigenous food into basically everybody's life who would listen. So and Ryan was very pointed in his language that in Canada, and I would probably translate this into all of Northern North America, we should be celebrating First Nations cultures and cuisines as the one thing that binds us together. Like, he's got a really funny essay in the book. I had to clean up a lot of the language because he's and I left a few of the F-bombs in, but really it was just like peppered with them. But I will paraphrase. He's like, why are we copying Europe? We're doing a second-rate job of copying somewhere else when we have this beautiful, inspiring, these multiple, plural, beautiful, inspiring cultures and people who are creating wonderful works of art in Canada. Like, why are we still in this colonialist mindset that we have to be second best at a faraway cuisine? So it was really nice to hear him come out so strongly in favor of the argument. And I think this is kind of an interesting side note to the book, is First Nations cuisine for me now is something that I celebrate all the time easily. Whereas at first I had to learn to become comfortable with where that narrative there. So I would actually be really keen to hear from people who are watching, like what their reaction is to, and what people's fears are, and what your what the barriers are to you celebrating First Nations cuisine if you're not, and celebrating Native and First Nations cuisine if you are, where you live. Because to us, that was a really important element, was just to empower people. Like Shane empowered me, and we wrote this book together. So if I can cook this stuff at home, anybody can.
Yeah, please let us know in the chat. We'd love to know. I can say from the research that I was doing about Native American and Indigenous foodways and what that meant, and me and Catherine looked at it from pre-colonization to during colonization and the impact that it had on both groups, and seeing how it's changed, and then seeing the difficulties during forced relocation with the Trail of Tears, and from a history standpoint. And it was always done in a very past tense of like, it's tied in with the first Thanksgiving, and that's not an entire group of people's food. And it was more of like, what else is there? And a lot of it was written in the past tense, which I was like, there, it's not past tense. It's happening right now. These people, I'm a little frazzled when I read about this, because it was just like, I know that there's more, and there's all of these books, and a lot of the books that were being published were not recent, which I think was more frustrating, because I think one of the earliest, latest ones that I was able to find was like 2000, and it was still in this like past tense voice. And it was just very frustrating of, why are you saying this? What editor agreed to this, and why was it being printed, and why was it not redacted?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something to think about. So we deal with 60 Scoop. We do a Truth and Reconciliation and residential school. So a lot of people don't really understand that we have been ripped apart.
Oh, Shane?
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
There he is.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with this phone. We've been ripped apart from our culture in so many ways. That's why I don't speak Cree, because where do I go to speak Cree? Because we were never allowed to speak Cree way back when. Otherwise, we would be crucified, and we couldn't wear earrings, we couldn't wear feathers, nothing, zero. We just weren't allowed to. And I think that is absolutely atrocious to do that to any nation. And that's not Indigenous, that's anyone. That's Irish, that's English, that's British, that's French. But we were the only ones that everything was torn away. But that's why I collect so much stuff that actually Jen's mom has gifted me a lot of really interesting Indigenous artifacts that I'm trying to build a museum in my home right now. It's going well, but I mean, there's so much information. I mean, it'll take you a lifetime to figure it out. It won't take you a year. You have to study. Jen did a really good job at studying. I was shocked how hard she worked. And it's not the writing part. The writing part is easy for her. She knows how to write. It's the fact that she went out of her way and learned about our nation and learned about our people. And she really worked hard. And that's why one day I'm going to get her to be a Cree. I'm going to get an elder to make her a Cree.
That's quite a
Well,
compliment. I love
yeah.
hearing about your friendship. The two of you seem to be just so in sync with each other and work so well off of each other. And I feel love between the two of you, which I think is wonderful. And it makes a wonderful working relationship and friendship, I think.
Oh, no. Don't get me wrong. She pisses me off.
No, you're supposed to take the compliment and you're
kidding,
just supposed to say,
I'm
thank
kidding,
you.
Honestly, Jen knows I'm kidding, because I've never, not one time in all that time we ever got in one single argument at all. And I am not easy to work with. I am super fast and super annoying, and I don't know. I just roll things off the off my wing, and Jen is the one that controlled me and told me to slow down and give me this and give me that ingredient. How much salt did you use? How much pepper did you use? Trust me, this book is not, it's my book. I get it, but that's why. And then Jen, I told her I want her name on the front cover, and she didn't even really want it. I'm like, you have to, like, your name should be as big as my name.
Well,
If not, it's Jennifer's book, not me. I'll be the second name.
Well, first of all, thank you, Shane. And I just want to do a shout out. Speaking of Cree, I have these beautiful earrings on that were gifted to me, and they are these beautiful beaded work with moose hide, and they're lovely hoops by a Cree artist out in the Okanagan Valley in the interior of BC, Jacqueline Stewart. So since we're celebrating this month, these are Jacqueline Stewart's. I don't know if you've seen these, Shane.
I've never seen those, but those are sick.
I know, they're lovely, aren't they?
Oh my God.
They are quite
Rhonda.
beautiful.
Rhonda says beautiful earrings.
Thank you, Rhonda. Well, and also Margaret was just saying the Irish language in Ireland was forbidden and it's a dying language. You know, Shane compliments me for, you know, digging in and working on this. I wanted to. I was born on Treaty 6 land. And as Cowboy Smith says in the book in an essay, we were all robbed of the beauty of Indigenous cultures growing up in the colonialist construct that is Canada. And we're slowly trying to unravel it and recover it. But when you lose culture, which is language, which is food, you lose stories, you lose connection, you lose generational knowledge that everybody benefits from. So I did this book as much for my own education as I had a particular skill set that I could help Shane with. Shane has a skill set that is completely magical to me, which is we would book time to, you know, work on, we got to work on 10 recipes. And I'd book, you know, 4 or 5 days and I'd go visit him in his kitchen and we'd go shopping together and spontaneously just buy food. And then we take it back to his professional kitchen and he would pace around like a shark in the kitchen, just thinking, kind of being very quiet, being very internal. And I would get my notebook ready because I knew it was coming. And then he would explode in the kitchen, just cooking furiously and almost like he couldn't keep up with his ideas that were tumbling out. And he would just put plates of food down. And we had our photographer ready to photograph everything as it was being created, because Shane's spontaneity and creativity, he doesn't like to repeat himself. It's boring. He's been there, done that. And so we were capturing lightning in a bottle. And I was running around, honestly, like, okay, how much salt? What did you just do there? Stop moving so fast. Hang on, back up. And then we would taste it. And then I would go home that night and I would type and write out all the recipes and do my best to recreate the recipe from my taste memory. So, I mean, that's how we worked. It's a very unconventional way of writing a cookbook. But you know what? It's true. When the cookbook came out in October 2019, in the before times, and we got to go on book tour. We had a 5-city book tour, so much fun. And I just said to Shane, and we never had a fight. And it's true. 4.5 years of working together and being very different people and having very different work structures in our brains. But we both recognized what value we brought to this book. And it was for the message. Like, we always had the message in our minds, what this meant, just even to the Enoch Cree Nation. We felt the pressure, let me tell you. When they found out, when people on Enoch found out we were doing a cookbook and we had landed a pretty substantial publisher, it was terrifying, because all of a sudden you're doing this little project together and then there's the world watching you or your community watching you. For me, I wanted to get it right, because I knew the pressure that Shane was feeling, and I didn't want Shane to get in trouble because we had been too tired to double check something, or we hadn't got something right. And we weren't trying to create a historical cookbook, as you like, that's the whole thing. This is contemporary. This is Shane. This is one person's take on Indigenous food. And he has both legs to stand on because that's who he is. But we also felt the pressure from the wider community in a good way. It pushed us to be probably better than what we might have, otherwise done, because we just knew this was bigger than the two of us. And that's, part of the joy of working as hard as we're still able to talk about this book 2 years later.
So here's something to think about. I suffer from anxiety. So that's in the book. I've got a ton of tattoos, as you can see, but they all mean something. I'm not a tattooed chef trying to be a cool tattooed chef. That's not tattoos. They all mean something. We got a chapter on that. We got a chapter on anxiety. We got a chapter on friends, family, my mom and dad. Like, it's disgustingly fun. I know that I'm going back and forth. That's not the way I should have said it, but I did. But it's a book that you just can't put down. So if you're sitting there, the good thing about this book, and Rhonda, to everyone, I think the big thing is, like I said before, you can. Oh, by the way, all the recipes work. Jen made sure that everything worked. And furthermore, I know TV show chefs. I mean, I do TV too. But guys that have done it long more than me, wrote cookbooks and literally did not practice any of the recipes and didn't even check if they worked. They just wrote it out and they somehow published a book. Jen, Julie, Catherine, I don't even know who else to say, made sure that
Winnie
who's
was
that?
Winnie.
Oh yeah, Winnie, yeah. Oh yeah, of course, Winnie. These people made sure that everything worked out properly. Every recipe worked right. The seasoning was perfect. It wasn't exaggerated. But the pictures, holy Catherine Sprague, geez.
Yeah,
I don't world known. I really don't.
I don't know if it works over Zoom, but I just want to show you so Catherine used to be an urban farmer. That's where I met her. And then in her 30s, she decided that she was going to be a photographer. And so she was, working really hard, but she got pregnant very early on in the photography portion of this cookbook.
Oh, right.
And it was a very warm year. I just want to show you the powwow photos. So powwow in Canada, and I'm sure elsewhere, everybody can go to powwow. You just have to, ask what the protocol is and whatnot. Anyways, Catherine is pregnant. It's like very warm outside. I don't know, 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And she's walking around at powwow, taking these incredible photos for us and capturing, as I said, we would wait around and just capture lightning in the bottle when Shane was putting out a dish that, here's our Three Sisters soup. That's a familiar recipe to many people, but this is Shane's take on it.
That looks delicious.
Catherine was taking photographs. She actually had her baby about 4 days before our last photo shoot was scheduled. And we were so tunnel vision working on this book. I actually said to her, well, I can hold the baby if you come and take the photos. And she's not going to happen. But what I did get is like 3 a.m. she's sending me texts and how to set up the photo, how to set up the camera, what what parameters to use. Go rent this camera from this store and then set it up, 4 feet up and shoot it down and all the numbers that we needed. And I mean, she was just incredible. So everybody went above and beyond. And that's why it's this big love fest. Because man, if it wasn't a love fest, it would have been crazy. But I don't know if we don't speak in very linear terms. So I just want to make sure everyone knows, gets their questions answered, because I know I was just rambling at the beginning while Shane was trying to log in and whatnot. But we love looking at the chat lines. So
They're great. I had a question as I was hearing the two of you talk about writing things down and talking about family recipes and the food infusion that you work with and what inspires you. When you were putting the recipes together, did any of your taste memories inspire something else, and it kind of where you thought you were going inspired something that ended up completely different?
I'll start on this one. I sometimes get a little hyper, and Jen had to calm me down and say, "Yeah, that's not for the book." Like I would do some crazy stuff with tuna and whatever, and because I was getting excited. But then the problem with me is I'm an Aries, and I'm a little different. Aries are weird people, and I was getting super excited, and she said no to this, no to that, no to that. The thing is, I don't get offended about that kind of stuff, like and the reason being is because like I've made a lot of mistakes in the culinary world, like just because I'm 46 years old. And I cooked in New York, I cooked in LA, I cooked in Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, all over. But sometimes I just get a little carried away. And I need people to kind of break me back down. Like I don't need to do sous vide all the time or some crazy molecular gastronomy dish that's no one's going to make at home. No one's going to do it at home. And it made sense when we wrote tawâw because you need to be able to make the ingredients. Now, you can make everything in the book at the house. You can. Whether you choose to or not, that's one thing. This is not the French Laundry. This is not, like I said, I got 60 cookbooks up in my condo, which, by the way, I read none of them. Because they're impossible. Like, they're impossible books. And me and Jen talked about this before, like how many cookbooks do you, and unless it's like Betty Crocker or Company's Coming, that's just, easier food. But that doesn't excite me. I have to get inspired. And tawâw is about inspiration, about life stories, about friendship. It's about so many things that I don't think any other cookbook has it. I really don't. I can't think of one. Can you, Jen? I can't.
Well, I mean, we're so we're so into tawâw basically because of what we do that to me it's almost normalized. But then I look at things like, oh, we have a salmon pemmican recipe in there. That's kind of cool. We have bison skewers. We have, so they are unusual recipes. And when Shane was talking about, it was interesting because the creativity and the recipes were getting very complicated because your mind was working so quickly and you wanted to add and add and add. And I would say, that's done. That recipe is good. Just like that, people don't want to make 19 components. It gets frustrating as a home cook, right? And so I was trying not to control his mind and tell him
no, but I was very appreciative. Like it was it made sense when you explained it to me.
Right. Like if we were going to put 2 more garnishes on that really weren't going to add to the flavor, then it was just going to be another 2 more recipes that would have to be made for, a little hit of this or a hit of that that just makes it look pretty. So I did have to reel him in, swim to shore, because
Somebody
Yeah, yeah.
with very limited counter space in a tiny New York City apartment. That
Right.
is
I was
music
thinking
to my
too.
ears.
Exactly. I was thinking, well,
Well,
and that's,
no, it's almost like come back home, man.
yeah.
You're totally out of control. Like and I do get like that. Like I get like that with everything, and
Because you're
you
excited,
know,
right?
it depends what it is. Like I mean, like music, for instance, cookbooks, for instance, movies. Like I get excited about certain things, and then like right now I want to be. I was on three music videos. As I was an actor,
Model
and
act.
I just oh yeah, I modeled as well. I don't look like a model right now, but I did model a couple times. That was weird.
So
Just because I like to challenge myself. I like to do something that I don't think I can do, and because I suffer from anxiety, which is I'm not sure if you understand what that is. It's a strange thing to deal with. But the way you beat it is by just going. So a friend of mine, Cowboy Smith, as we've talked about, said one time to me, which Jen knows, the bison will never back down to a storm. All the other animals will. The bison will run at the storm because they want to battle through the storm to get to the other side. And survive. They're gonna get bit, they're gonna get hurt, they're gonna get bruised, they're gonna get a little beat up, but they'll still make it. And it's kind of a really strong indication of what me and Jen did. Like I didn't think I'm not gonna lie to you, Jen knows this. I didn't think we were gonna write this book. I was like, yeah, right. Everybody thinks they can write a book, and everybody I knew Jen, but I didn't know how good she was. Other people approached me to write a book, but their ideas were stupid and silly, and they wouldn't listen to me and or agree. And then oh yeah, one book name, which by the way, Jen, I never told you, and I won't tell you who she is until later on. Um, they wanted the cookbook to be called Good Foodie.
ooh,
That's a
okay.
choice.
Brutal.
That doesn't really speak to you or me, but that's okay. But see,
But
okay, Shane
it
is the
was
bison. He will run into chaos and storm and difficulty. And I admire that because I'm very tentative. But what I do is I plod along bit by bit and I get us to the finish line. So that's how it worked. I just want to answer Miriam's question. So besides Cree-inspired recipes, any other First Nations people's culinary experiences? Yes, Shane travels a lot in Canada. And Shane has traveled up north and to different nations, even within Alberta. And his mom, Belinda, is Mi'kmaq Irish. So we have lots of Shane draws from his West Coast relatives. He's got relatives here in the interior of British Columbia, which is interior Salish, Silk people. So it's not a, we didn't try to do a pan-Indigenous cookbook, but things that made sense within Shane's life. So absolutely. And then Shane, this is a question for you. Ken wants to know, can these recipes be adapted to food trucks?
Well, that's an interesting question because I just got an offer to open 3 food trucks.
So I guess we'll find out.
I'm working on it.
Ooh, so that's
Yeah.
a maybe.
There are recipes in here, like the bison on a stick, which is just a really simple bison skewers, like yakitori skewers, but made with bison strip loin. That would be really good. Bannock. Bannock is a great recipe. Like it's the bread recipe that is the celebratory problematic but celebratory food recipe. We've got ulichin, so little sardines, and those would be great from a food truck. So Ken, there you go. You got 3 recipes to start with. Absolutely.
Well, if Ken's listening right now, even the stew we made, like just a simple stew with bannock. There's Arctic char, super simple. The problem with fish is it can be expensive. But it can't be too at the same time. It depends on the salmon you get, I guess, and the Arctic char you get. But and you just
And
gotta be careful on where you get it from, and make sure that it's ethical. It doesn't need to be like ocean wise, but it's a good idea. I agree with ocean wise, but I think at the end of the day, just understand where the food's coming from and make sure that and you're not getting stuff that's not fed the right food. I've been on 4 bison ranches, and one ranch actually really pissed me off. They're feeding their bison corn, and that is not good for their diet. And I couldn't say anything because that's not up to me to say that, but I was irritated that they were doing that. Some people say that it's good for them, but I disagree. I think that's a bad choice, but that's just my opinion. So I try to do research when I'm unsure, and that's the big thing, is making sure that you do research when you don't totally know. Don't say you know something unless you just do a little research, because then that's when you start to learn. And that's why the book is the way the book is. Jen did research, I did research, I have my life, I got my friends and my family.
You have your home nation.
My nation, but other nations too, like the Blood Tribe and the Kainai, the Piikani, the Métis settlements. They're all really nice to me. Matter of fact, actually, they're more nice to me than my own nation is. It's funny how it works, because like I could be on TV, I could do a Food Network TV show in my own town. They don't care.
Right.
It's straight that works. But then I go to Vancouver, they're like, oh my God, you're that guy. You just suck.
It's true. You're never very attractive to the people that see you every day. But if you're from somewhere else, you're treated like a hero. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're jealous.
So what's happening in the States in Native American food? I mean, we know about Sean Sherman. He was very kind to us and provided a blurb for our book. I just found out about this iCollective collaborative cookbook that was in the New York Times. And actually there's a fellow from Treaty 6 who's involved in it as well. So I think he now lives in Tokyo. So what's happening? I want to hear what's going on in the lower part of northern North America.
Yeah, Shane, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'll let her speak.
No, I was gonna say, I think Sean Sherman is probably the most well-known broadly in the United States. If you're not super connected into like the food culinary world, I think Sean Sherman is probably the most well-known. I think one of the things that I find really interesting, and I think this is probably just in relation to how this continent itself was settled by European colonizers, is that a lot of the indigenous restaurants or the people who are big in the Indigenous Foodways world right now tend to be from the West Coast or like Sean, Midwest. And I mean, granted, I was just kind of Googling, doing basic Google searches, but I couldn't find anything of, about anyone contemporary doing cuisine that's out of the Lenape and Algonquin and those kind of heritages. And I wonder if that's just because the time that these folks have been disconnected from this sort of this cuisine, it was ripped from them in the 17th and 18th centuries. And so I think that's something that's kind of interesting to me as going on in the United States. And I don't know if it's the same way in Canada. But yeah, I think that is, but I have been hearing about more and more Indigenous restaurants and chefs doing that kind of stuff. But again, it's all like West Coast. And even the National Museum of the American Indian, their cafe in the museum, I think the head chef is Navajo or something like that. So it's a really interesting thing to me.
I've seen a big growth in undergrad and graduate programs as well, because when I was looking to see kind of what Jen asked was, well, who's making what here? And especially I think me and Catherine were talking about this about our research, was a lot of it was not documented so much where we are in the tri-state area. It's a lot of undergraduate programs that are trying to build out these student models for how do you study this? How do you reclaim it? How do you make it ours again in the 21st century and understand colonization in the text of all of this, in the context of all of this? So it's up and coming. I think there's a lot of young 20-somethings that are ready to start their path on and make their name and ready to come back out.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that was interesting that came to me out of doing research on both historically and contemporary is how much, what we think of as like traditional New England food comes out of Algonquin foodways and Iroquois foodways from this area. And, I think a theme in tawâw is all about memory, both personal memory and kind of cultural memory. And there's now this kind of, I don't want to say conflict, but there's like this rubbing up where you think about traditional New England foods and how those connect and how those can be in kind of have some friction with the fact that they are Indigenous.
Naima just popped in some links. Hi, Naima. She's great. PBS has a series about contemporary Indigenous chefs, and she put a link in the chat group, which is great. Thank you. And sorry to be distracting, but this is the problem with this time of day is I lose my light. I have to have my blinds down because the west facing sun it's streaming in and, blasting me out. And all of a sudden the light falls. So thank God for lights.
Well, we are a little over in time. I think that was a great place to end of where Foodways is going today and the impact that we're seeing. I would like to thank Jennifer and Shane for joining us with technical difficulties and making it through. It was wonderful to finally hear everybody, and especially with a different time zone, so it's much greatly appreciated. I implore everybody to go out and buy tawâw. It is wonderful. I'm trying to get it into my Barnes and Nobles by me because they did not have it. I was very disappointed.
Connect you with our publisher. We have distribution in the States. It's at McNally, Jackson, and New York, and elsewhere. But thank you. And support tawâw. That'd be fantastic. Buy some amazing, artwork from somebody in your community. That would be wonderful too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Again, this was wonderful. I learned so much and I loved listening to the two of you speak and seeing your friendship and the in and outs of making a cookbook.
Well,
You know,
thank
no, Jen is a dream. I mean, you can't, um,
I love it.
you very little, like in your life, you don't meet people like that very often. So I'll say this in following and finishing is we have to have celebration. So our celebration between all of us right now is this. Jen's heard me say it a ton of times. We will never have this conversation again at this time of day. We will never be talking about the same thing. So that's celebration to you all and to Jen always. And hi.
Hi, hi. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And we appreciate you listening to our crazy story. So
If they only knew more, holy.
that's
That's where I stopped the recording.
exactly.